everybody, it's Muscle Car Campy, and we're back with another great car. This time, it's one of my favorites, a 1967 Shelby GT500. More importantly, we've got the owner who's restored these cars for many, many years and can tell all kinds of great stories about what these cars were really all about. Before we get to that though, don't forget, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're notified every time a new video goes live. We've got so many cool cars and you won't want to miss any of them. You know, when Ford first approached Carroll Shelby about building a sports car out of the Mustang, he derided the whole concept of making a sports car out of what he called a secretary special. Of course, Ford was pretty adamant. Ford knew what it wanted, and Shelby American, to its credit, turned that car into an absolute beast on the racetrack. They took the back seat out, they created the first GT350, and those cars just wiped out the Corvettes in B production sports car racing. But by 66 and 67, the worm had turned. They definitely wanted a car that was more luxurious, more stylish. A lot of the ads at the time showed women driving them. So in 2 short years, they went from being a race car for the street to being more of a car that was advertised as a European GT. By 1967, things had changed. The GT350 had become more civilized, and now there was a big block Mustang to contend with. Rather than stick with the 390 offered in every other Stang, Shelby dropped in a modified version of the 428 Police Interceptor. He knew the 390 didn't have enough suds to live up to the Shelby name, so he topped the 428 with dual quads on an aluminum medium riser intake and squeezed it between the shock towers. Thus, the GT500 was born, a real player with 355 gross horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. That was plenty for a near 3,400-pound pony car. Mechanically, everything under the hood here is stock. You still have the dual 600 Hollies on the aluminum intake. The Monte Carlo bar was an option. The export bar was not. That was standard equipment. The only real deviations under here, the chrome shock mounts and the chrome radiator mounts. But the owner, Dom, has all the correct parts to put it back to stock. He also added these little emblems on top, and instead of running the spark plug wires over the top of the valve covers, he thought it would look a little bit neater if they went around the bottom of the valve covers.
Yeah, my name is Dom Forty. I'm the owner of this 67 GT500. I've had it for 44 years. Over the years, I've done a few different things to it to make it more accommodating to me, which was changing the plug wire locations and that. There was a lot of aerodynamic work went into the 67s, which most people don't know about, as far as the way they lengthened the front about 2 inches, actually almost 3 inches, and sloped the nose a little bit more to get downforce, as well as sloping the hood. Ford had sent them a Mule 390 67 GT to model the fiberglass. This is all fiberglass nose, fiberglass hood. And when they started assembling them, they found that the nose pieces weren't fitting well. And come to find out, when they checked with Ford, supposedly the Mule they sent had been in a wreck in their testing, and it wasn't exactly perfect. That being said, so they had to hand do most of the fit of these, which is a one-piece fiberglass. So you'll look and see like your hood pin bracket, it's got a slight angle to it on this side, but on this side it's straight. The fiberglass they would grind on for fit. You'll see some differences in the thicknesses of the fiberglass in various different areas. The hood, I've added a prop rod also because the hoods were known for warping because of the springs, because they were the steel hood springs. So I added a prop rod because I didn't want it to warp. So the hood, they sit a little bit low because they didn't line up well. That was just a characteristic of them. Your scoops are totally functional. The scoops, you'll see an air duct hole, okay, and that air duct blows into the wheel well, and people call them brake scoops, which they are. But Ford Aerospace, who worked on the Mercury and Gemini spacecraft missions, they did a lot of wind tunnel testing and found that the air going across this lip causes a little pressure drop, which creates a vacuum on the car to slow it down. So by blowing air in, it does cool the brakes, but it also blows air out, which takes the drag off. Secondly, instead of a spoiler, this is called a cam tail. And the cam tail puts down force as the air hits it, as well as the front being sloped puts air to put down force on the car. These scoops here came off the Ford GT40s, and actually there's a divider in here, but the air goes across the divider and creates a suction to pull air through the cab and out. Okay, same as the 67 Mustang, just had the finned scoop basically, but they used the Shelby, the GT40 scoop, because it made it look a little styling to the car. So they are functional. So a lot more went into the car than most people thought. The engine is 3/4 of an inch further back than a 390 Mustang to put more weight past the spindle. They lowered the car a bit in the suspension to put, a little better handling. Of course, it's got bigger springs and a bigger front sway bar.
It's at this point where we're going to address one of the more controversial aspects of this video. It concerns the stripes on 67 and 68 Shelby Mustangs. As you could see in these early ads, the 67 GT500 and GT350 had the infamous LeMans stripes across the hood, roof, and trunk. Once production started, however, these stripes were nowhere to be found, and the only stripes that you could get on the car ran along the lower side of the body. Of course you're saying, but muscle car can't be. Every 67 GT500 I've ever seen has had LeMans stripes. And that may be the case, but they're definitely not stock. According to a Shelby American Auto Club judge that we spoke to, 0 cars were delivered from the factory with the LeMans stripes. There's also no documented proof that any of these stripes were dealer installed prior to delivery. Again, Car and Driver magazine called the GT500 a grown-up sports car for smooth touring, and went on to say it was just a purring, well-controlled tiger. Its test car was laden with options, including air conditioning and the C6 automatic, and could only run 15.0 at 95 miles an hour in the quarter. That speed indicates it could have run a lot quicker. In a contemporary test, Sports Car Graphic ran a 14.2 at 92 miles per hour with a 4-speed car and a 325 gear. Because these were 67 Cougar taillights, there was a little bit of light that came through on here when the lights were on, because the Cougar had a license plate here. So to light up the license plate, you got light from here and light from here. They didn't change that with the Shelby Mustangs. It basically just lit up the gas cap, which I think is very cool. Obviously, they had to add a light down here because can't go around without a license plate light. Another change on this car, this has the panel, the quad tip panel that Ford used in later cars. This is car number 1642. Just getting into this GT500 is an exciting experience. You've got the aluminum trim deluxe interior. You've got this special wooden steering wheel with the holes in it, with the Shelby GT500 emblem in the center. You got the GT500 emblem on the side over there. I mean, everything about this car gets you excited before you've even turned the key. And I can tell you, when you start it up, your heart starts palpitating because it is wonderful. Other features on this car: it's got a dealer installed factory AM 8-track. It's got the Shelby rally gauges underneath. It's got oil pressure and amps. A lot of people don't know this, but it was the old rally gauge cluster bracket from the year before that Shelby fashioned a bracket for, turned it upside down, and put it under the radio because they definitely needed more gauges in this car. 140 mile an hour speedometer, 6,000 RPM redline tach that went all the way up to 8,000. And what we really like on this car, among other features, are the shoulder harnesses that were on an inertia reel. This was the first use of a shoulder harness in the Mustang, was in the 67 Shelbys. And unlike most cars that have one belt coming down off the roof, or on a modern car it's a 3-piece belt, you actually had a lap belt that you could put on, and you had the inertia reel. These were a 2-piece shoulder harness. So you actually had kind of like a racing harness from the factory, and you could go like this if you needed to move, but look at that, you can't jerk forward, it just holds you in place. What's your favorite part of this car? I mean, I know you've had it forever, since '81. It's 2024. What's your favorite part about it?
The sporty feel. It gives me a very sporty feel. The sound and driving. It's a very agile car to drive, surprisingly, with the big engine up there. They did a nice job on the steering geometry.
It's got a real mechanical sound to it, the engine too. Not like a solid lifter can, but it definitely.
Yeah, it's not too radical.
Yeah.
But overall, the sporty feel, I love the way it looks.
Yeah,
it's just, you get out and you just like looking at it while you're walking away. It's that
I do think it's the best looking of all the Shelbys. You know, all the Shelby Mustangs.
Now, the stock 428 would have had a little milder sound. This is close to the sound, but not. It still sounds a little more.
What exhaust is on?
Actually, it's got 2.5 going into Flowmasters.
Okay.
And they're 3-chamber Flowmasters. Because I didn't want it too loud.
And the cam is stock?
Yeah. Now, in order to keep it a little cleaner, I run a little higher idle.
Okay.
Than a stock one. Just makes it sound a little different too.
You know, Ford was correct when it thought it could sell a lot more option-laden, smooth-riding Shelby GTs. Production increased by 848 cars over 66, and that even includes the 1,000 cars or so that were ordered for Hertz. So this car really sold a lot of units. Not surprisingly, the GT500 sold more units than the GT350. All right, everybody, that's a wrap. We'd like to thank owner Dom Forte for letting us enjoy his 67 GT500. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and get notified every time a new video goes live.